if you're watching this video, you probably have come to know that our thoughts, especially our attachment and identification with our thoughts, is what leads to a huge amount of suffering in our lives. And for me, the type of thoughts that I have struggled with the most and that have led to the most internal conflict for me are what I call the controlling thoughts, or the thoughts, or the I should thoughts, which are the thoughts that tell me to either be or act differently than how I am or how I'm acting in the very current moment. And the most rigid of these thoughts are so relentless and so controlling that they have brought so much anxiety into throughout my life. And for the longest time, for the past 15 years of my life, the way I've been navigating these thoughts is to essentially escape them. I would suppress them. I would try to avoid them. I would even try to, conjure up different thoughts in an attempt to impose onto these controlling thoughts in order to replace them. But obviously, none of this strategy worked. And it actually made things so much worse for me because every time I would try to escape these thoughts, I was actually teaching or signaling to my nervous system that these thoughts are bad, that these thoughts are to be avoided. And so my nervous system started to perceive these thoughts as threatening. And when our nervous system sees something as a threat, it becomes hyper alert around this very thing. It starts to constantly monitor this perceived threat. It's constantly on the lookout for it. And this constant focus is actually what makes these perceived threats appear and reappear in awareness more frequently. And it's what makes them persist, it's what amplifies them because we're constantly looking for them. Our attention is constantly focused on them. So the more these thoughts persisted, the more I would try to escape or avoid them, and the more my nervous system would perceive them as threats. And obviously, the more my nervous system would then react to them, and then the more they would persist. So it was this downward spiral that brought so much emotional charge around these controlling thoughts that actually turned them into just full-on intrusive thoughts for me that would trigger such a huge amount of fear where I would become stuck in this fight or flight mode immediately as soon as they arise in my awareness. Um, and by this point of my experience, you probably have already guessed that the way to navigate these thoughts then isn't about escaping them, but instead it's more about accepting, allowing, and leaning into them. Because when we accept the thoughts, we're teaching our nervous system something completely different. We're teaching our nervous system that these thoughts are actually safe, that it doesn't have to brace every time these thoughts arise in awareness, so that it can relax and let these thoughts come and go naturally, just like any other thought that we actually don't pay much attention to. And also, when we accept the thoughts, we come into presence. Because when we resisted them, and because these thoughts are a part of our experience in this very moment, we were actually resisting a component of the present moment. And we're trying to escape from the present moment itself by avoiding this one aspect of it. So when we accept the thoughts, when we accept something that we have always tried to escape, we are actually embracing all aspects of the present moment. So we're allowing ourselves to drop into the now. And the more you practice acceptance, the more you will experience actually this deeper sense of presence and this deeper sense of grounding within yourself. And if you're like me, speaking and then speaking about this, explaining this, like everything just makes perfect sense. It's theoretically speaking, is a sound concept that's easy to grasp by our minds. But when it actually comes to practicing it, I actually experienced a lot of difficulty in my journey, especially at the beginning, because intellectual understanding isn't enough. And the reason being, it's not a process, this practice of acceptance, it's not a process led by our intellect. It's a process that's more embodied, that's actually led by our soul, by our being, by this deeper intention that sits beyond our rational mind. And as human beings, like we have been so conditioned to rely on our minds, to constantly trying to think our way out of a situation or constantly trying to fix things through our thoughts, that I actually fell into this habitual trap of the mind at the beginning of my practice, where I would tell myself to accept the thoughts in my mind. And what this resulted in was that instead of actually allowing the controlling thoughts that have led me to this practice, initially I was creating yet another controlling thought in my mind that told me to accept these initial controlling thoughts. So I was still very much in my mind thinking these controlling thoughts. I was very attached to them, identifying with them, and I actually felt an equal amount of anxiety from these new controlling thoughts that told me to accept, because by their very nature, they're controlling and they're demanding. So they were no different than the initial thoughts that I wanted to escape from, that actually, catalyzed this desire to practice acceptance. So after realizing this, I tried to shift the practice into a more embodied form, where I would try to lean into the thoughts themselves. But in doing so, I was shifting my awareness, like all of my awareness and all of my mental energy, onto the thoughts in my mind. And in this process, I started to notice that instead of relaxing, my nervous system actually felt more hyper aroused, like it felt more alert, because I I came to realize that by channeling all of my energy and attention onto the thoughts themselves, it was essentially the same thing as me thinking these thoughts actively in my mind. So because I was allowing them to remain in the driver's seat of my full awareness. So in a way, I was strengthening my attachment to and identification with these thoughts rather than moving towards the goal of detaching my nervous system from them. So as you can see, this second experimentation I had with this practice of acceptance also didn't quite hit the mark. So instead of jumping into the next solution, into the next strategy, next experimentation, I decided to just slow myself down, because I wanted to really get to know the thoughts first, really understand their nature better, in order to use this understanding to then inform me on what truly accepting or allowing them would feel or look like. So I would spend a lot of time during my day to just sit with them, to just be with the thoughts, despite this inner urge, this desire to resist them, because that's what I have always done for the past 15 years. I would just will my awareness, will myself to stay with the thoughts as much as possible, to be very intimate with them, to get close to them. And it was through this process of sitting with these thoughts, I began to realize something, which is that these thoughts are always accompanied by something that we can feel in our bodies, whether it's an emotion, a feeling, a physical sensation, or just energetic flow inside of ourselves. And a lot of times, these sensations or feelings are in a way triggered or triggered by or closely associated with the thoughts themselves. But other times, these feelings and sensations are something that the thoughts that would arise in our awareness is trying to suppress, is trying to distract our attention away from. But either way, the sensation of feelings accompany the thought or are behind the thoughts themselves. And sometimes these sensations and feelings and energies are strong, like they're very easy to detect, especially if they are closely related to a deep a deep wound that we carry or some sort of traumatic experience that we've had before. But at other times, they're more subtle. For example, they might just be a slight discomfort in our bodies that the thoughts are trying to, suppress without our noticing. So having come to see that there are always something we can feel in the bodies that come with the thoughts themselves, I then started to practice a different type of leaning in. And this time, I'm not leaning into the thoughts themselves, but instead I'm leaning into the sensations and feelings and energies behind the thoughts. And it was very difficult at first because, again, like as human beings, we've been conditioned throughout our lives and through numerous generations to always operate from our minds, to live from the mind. So operating from this place of feeling and sensing is something that we haven't cultivated, something that we simply don't know how to do. So for me at the beginning, it was kind of this like gear switch, but it was like I didn't even know what gear to switch to because I had never experienced that gear before, and I didn't even know how to make that switch happen. So it was very messy, and it involved a lot of experimentation and learning. And in a way, I wish there was someone that has walked this path before that would inject a muscle memory of some sort or an experiential understanding of how leaning into the sensations in your body would feel like for me, just to make my process easier. But now that I have practiced this for some time now myself and think that I've gone to a good place with it where I've seen progress and shared my personal experience, I think I've gained enough experiential understanding now myself that I want to share with you guys to help make the gear shift in your own journeys a bit smoother. And I think the best way to share this experiential understanding verbally is to compare it to an experience that perhaps most of us have had before. So if I were to compare what leaning in or allowing the sensations or energies behind thoughts feels like, it's very similar to tasting something for the very first time, because that very moment when you put that thing into your mouth, you immediately drop into the experience of it, the experience of the taste of it, and you're just exploring, certainly not with your mind, and definitely not just through your senses or palates, but you're exploring fully with your being. And that full immersion of your awareness in this one experience, in exploring this experience, is what it feels like to lean in to the sensations and energies in our bodies. And the more you practice this, like this embodied full immersion exploration of an experience, you'll start to notice that the thoughts would come, but neither are you resisting them or are you attaching yourself to them or getting lost in your mind in them, because you're welcoming and allowing a version of these thoughts that sit inside your body. And in doing so, you're focusing your awareness on, you're anchoring your awareness in your body, which is a portal to our being, to our soul. So you're anchoring your awareness in your authentic being instead of in the mind around the thoughts. And having practiced this myself for a short period of time now, I'm definitely still in the midst of this practice. I'm still learning because it is something difficult, but even within the short amount of time that I have practiced it, I've already seen progress and changes in my day-to-day experience. And the first of these changes is that I definitely feel more present. I feel more grounded with myself. I feel this deeper sense of safety within myself. Because again, when we practice accepting something that we have always tried to escape from, we are we're learning to embrace all aspects of the present moment. And the more we do this, the more we practice this, we get more used to anchoring ourselves into the now, into the present. So it'll become easier and less effortful. And the second change I've experienced is that I'm definitely less attached to the thoughts in my mind, because every time these thoughts would arise, I anchor my awareness inside my body by focusing on leaning into the sensations and energies behind the thoughts. So as I do this, as I focus on letting the energies flow to completion inside my body, I'm actually not paying much attention to the thoughts in my head at all. And what happens is that these thoughts kind of just come and go naturally on their own without me even noticing. And again, as you practice more, it will become more of a second nature. Like, it will be more automatic that you anchor immediately in your body and requiring less effort, and the thoughts would come and go even with less notice of your attention. And last but not least, I've also been experiencing this heightened sensitivity around energy and frequency in general. And the example that comes to mind right now is that nowadays when I eat food, like when I have a meal, I can actually feel the frequency or the energy of the different food items in a single plate or in a single meal. For example, the vegetables, their energy feels more expansive to me, whereas the meat products, especially the ones that are factory raised, especially the ones that we get from the supermarket or a chained superstore, that they kind of feel denser. Their energies are heavier and they sit lower in my body than the energies of the vegetables. And I'm not trying to get into the frequencies of food in this video, but all I'm trying to say is that through this practice, this is one of the byproducts that you can expect, which is this sensitivity to not only energies within your own system, but the energies of your surrounding. And the more sensitive you become to energy within yourself and with like in your surrounding, the more you develop your intuition, the more attuned you will become to your intuition, because intuition's all about sensing, all about feeling, sensing into that deep knowing within ourselves, and sensing into that gut feeling rather than thinking in the mind. So in a way, as we learn to anchor our awareness and redirect our awareness from the mind to the body by learning how to accept those thoughts, accept the energies behind them, we're actually unlocking an immense amount of gift that naturally comes with the body that we have yet cultivated because of the deep conditioning that we have been brought up with around the attachment to the mind. So it's a wonderful gift to unlock because it will provide so much more wisdom, so much more clarity around our daily experiences, around our daily choices. It's a wealth of knowledge, wealth of the information that we have yet tapped into. So yeah, it's one of the most amazing byproducts of this experience. So with that, I think that's all I want to share in this video. But the last thing I would like to encourage you, if you do decide to embark onto this journey of practicing acceptance and allowing the energies behind your thoughts on your own, I would just say, please be patient with yourself. Please be gentle with yourself, because again, it's not something that we have been taught how to do. It's not something that we are familiar with. So it does take time to get used to. It does take time to experiment with and learn. And plus, the more pressure we put on ourselves in terms of making a certain amount of progress in a certain amount of time, and the more we rush the process, the easier for us to fall into the traps of the mind, because that's what we're the most familiar with. And the mind is very tricky. So if you allow yourself to slow down, to really go through this process in a nuanced way, you give yourself the chance to notice these traps of the mind so that you can make that gear shift towards experimenting with, different way of being, different way of operating from this place of feeling and sensing. So, and also, it's just hard, but it doesn't require perfection. Like, it will be messy, especially at the beginning of the process as you make that switch, but it doesn't require perfection for you to make progress, because every time you're able to feel and sense into your body, you're doing something opposite of what you have been habitually conditioned to do, which is to think in the mind. And this act of opposition is an act of uprooting this deep conditioning. So even if you're only able to truly feel and sense into your body perhaps like 1 out of 30 times, that one time is one more inch that you've uprooted this conditioning around the mind. So each moment like this is worth celebration and is progress, and it will get easier. It will become more natural. It will require less effort as you continue to uproot the conditioning around the mind. So yeah, be compassionate and be gentle to yourself in this process. And I really hope that my explanation was clear in this video. But if you have any questions or confusion, don't hesitate to drop a comment or drop a question in the comment section. I will try my best to, share my personal experience if it's relevant, or answer your question the best way possible. So with that, I hope I see you in the next video. Bye.